World Combat Sports. Hello, everyone, fight fans all across the spectrum. Thank you for tuning in. We have an action-packed fight card in both genres of combat sports, i.e. boxing and MMA. I'm going to start off with the brief UFC 227 Cody Garbrandt versus TJ Dillashaw rematch. A little backplay between these two pugilists was they used to be under the same canopy, Team Alpha Male, if MMA, the same training partners and everything. Somehow, some way, the animus built up to a boiling point when Coach Dwayne Lugwit, who transfers back and forth now from California to Colorado to train. I guess it was a stronger bond between him and Dillashaw. And, you know, when it comes to coaches, sometimes they can actually select a fighter they would like to have under their tutelage. Every trainer wants a champion. And I guess somehow, some way, the bond was to a point where he felt that Dillashaw would be that future champion. And he was right. But unfortunately, you know, when it comes down to loyalty in that particular aspect, I believe Dillashaw kind of violated the code because he had already purchased a home and everything out there, you know, and he really didn't let the team know because obviously he didn't want the backlash. You're in a company of fighters. So if anyone was to get wind of the, the insidious type of dealings that was going on between Lugwit and Dillashaw, all heck would have broke loose in the gym. So when the tough series was going on, man, it was so contentious between teams, and they was airing out, you know, what usually doesn't make it out to the media, what goes on in camp, stays in camp. So it was playing out in front of the TV, which is always bad. And Cody Garbrandt and Dillashaw was just going at it. You know, they was due to fight, but, you know, Cody being the fighter he is, you know, what some would call a meathead, he just kept putting hands and trying to choke Dillashaw, and it was just bad all the way around. And then the trainers, the coaches was going back and forth with Lugwit, and it was all bad. But it was good for TV. Anyway, a little bit backplay with how this all came about of Dillashaw and Garbrandt meeting. Okay, when Dominick Cruz, the bantamweight champion, came back from a 2-year hiatus because he's injury prone for some reason, and he had been out. He came back and actually won the title from TJ Dillashaw, who was an active fighter. And, you know, Dominick Cruz is one of those fighters who don't believe in ring rust. So he came back, he defeated TJ Dillashaw, which at that point in time, he had no other alternative but to go back to the drawing board. Then came along Cody Garbrandt. On that night when he faced Dominick Cruz, he shined. He was elusive, unhittable. He used his boxing. He was superb. And let me tell you, he really performed at his best against an awkward. I mean, anybody would tell you Dominick Cruz is very, very difficult to train for. His style is all his own. You know, it's not something that you can teach anyone. The way his rhythm is when he's striking, it's just very, very awkward. It's not something that you can, you know, pull out a pamphlet and say, this is how you do it. No, it's just strictly an anomaly to Dominick Cruz. Well, Cody Garbrandt figured out the puzzle. And like I said before, he really looked great that night. And he ended up defeating Dominick Cruz. So in the process, guess what? He ended up running to his favorite friend up the road. And that was TJ Dillashaw, which they call the Snake. And guess what? Dillashaw, being the fighter he is, he embraced it. And he's, you know, made it his moniker right now. And it's fit him very well, man. You know, he's doing good for his family. But, you know, these two, TJ Dillashaw and Cody Garbrandt, end up meeting in the ring, in the cage. And the crazy thing about it is that Cody Garbrandt actually hurt Dillashaw in the first round. He actually dropped him. And, you know, to many that was in attendance, they thought the fight was going to be over, that Garbrandt would finally get his, you know, recognition out of the camp for what he's been talking about to the media, telling them that he's already knocked out Dillashaw before or knocked him down. So when he actually dropped Dillashaw, He was unable to finish him. The bell sounded, and, Dillashaw got up. He was unsteady. He made it back to his corner. In the second round, different story. Dillashaw came out, and I guess Garbrandt was a little bit reckless, not protecting himself the way he should be, and Dillashaw called him, dropped him, finished him off with strikes, and picked up the title. And when he stood there, that picture that went around that was viral with TJ's in Garbrandt's face, that usually doesn't happen. But in this particular, fighter relationship, I guess the referee allowed it to happen, because Garbrandt stood there and just Dillashaw just stood in Garbrandt's face and just yelled, man, like, now what? I just knocked you out. I just stopped you. Now what? So in between that fight, when the dust settled and everybody was healing and rehabbing or whatever the case may be, talks picked up. During this time, Dillashaw was talking about trying to call out Demetrius Johnsn in the flyweight division, but yet Garbrandt was talking about, no, we want a rematch. And really, Dillashaw, with all the contentiousness and animus built up between these guys, he really didn't want to give Garbrandt an immediate rematch, because he said it took him like 3 fights to get back in the picture, which is true. So they finally had a rematch this weekend, much anticipated, and you wouldn't believe what happened. Dillashaw ended up stopping Garbrandt again, and though Garbrandt was on his feet when the ref stopped it this time, he seemed to be out, defenseless. He was taking so much punishment. And yeah, true dynamic purist MMA fans know that there have been fights, I can name so many, that fighters have just been in so much trouble and the ref let it go because they understand that fighter is used to that chaos, that mayhem. In this particular case, Garbrandt was taking punishment and Cody was relentless with his pressure. And he ended up gaining the stop. Herb Dean stopped the fight. 0-2. 0-2 for Garbrandt. He has to go back to the drawing board and figure it out. Dillashaw, he's going to move on to bigger and better things. And little did he know, in the lower weight class in the flyweight division, Henry Cejudo versus Demetrius Johnsn went down. One of the GOATs to many MMA fans. He's defended his title 11 times. He has dominated the flyweight division. He was beaten by Dominique Cruz as a bantamweight. And then once the flyweight division maturated, he was the one that dominated ever since the inception. So he has basically defeated the who's a who in that division. Even his opponent yesterday, Henry Cejudo, he basically was able to stop him with strikes. He hit him with a knee. Cejudo back to the cage, unsteady, hurt from the body attack. And once again, Demetrius Johnsn, who knows how to finish, close distance, came in, dropped some more strikes, and the ref called the fight. For 2 years, Henry Cejudo said that he thought about that. And being that he wasn't the all-around fighter, he was still in the building stages, he wanted the rematch. Finally, last night, he was able to get his wish. And he looked better than previous. He did. I'm not saying Demetrius Johnsn looked bad. I truly believe that Henry Cejudo, an Olympic gold medalist, looked much better. And he was able to get some takedowns. And he was able to maintain top control and apply pressure. Now, he didn't do too much damage while he had the position. But, hey, he looked much polished. Not just as a Olympic gold medalist, a wrestler, but his striking was pretty improved, pretty much improved. So yes, he earned a split decision over Demetrius Johnsn, lifting the flyweight title from the longest reigning champion in that division. It was epic. It was an upset. And yes, I'm not sure, is there going to be an immediate rematch? But guess what? Henry Cejudo, he called out TJ Dillashaw. he said he wouldn't mind moving up to 135 and contending to be a 2-division champion. And, let's replay back to what I said about Dillashaw. Dillashaw didn't know exactly, but the UFC did. And he basically was informed that Henry Cejudo called him out and said he wouldn't mind coming up. And Dillashaw said he don't care. Okay, if you want to make the fight, let's do it. So will the fight fans be able to see Henry Cejudo versus TJ Dillashaw, the flyweight champion, newly crowned, against a 2-time, bantamweight champion Dillashaw, who was able to retain his title against Cody Garbrandt via first round stoppage? I don't know, but it will make for a good fight if Henry Cejudo can come over there up 135, because he will wear that weight better than Demetrius Johnsn. Demetrius just too small to move up against Dillashaw, but Cejudo is a different story. He will fit real nice, and if he was to move up to 135 to contend, it'll be good stuff. It'll be a good bout. I'm not going to give you the predictions on who I believe that will win, but guess what? I will. I believe TJ Dillashaw is a more well-rounded fighter, and even though Cejudo looks very good in his wrestling, I still get a nod to Dillashaw, who's improved leaps and bounds since he initially came into the UFC and John Dodson was able to stop him. Y'all don't remember that, do you? Yeah, but yeah. He was touted as a number one favorite. He went in there and Dodson closed the show, shocked him. And you know what? Dillashaw haven't looked back since. He's been on the up and up. And can't say the same for Dodson, who's, still an active fighter in the UFC, but he hasn't had the leisure, the recognition, and the wins, you know what I'm saying, such as Dillashaw. Moving on to boxing, okay? Let's talk about Andre Berto and Devon Alexander contending in the welterweight division. 147-pounders and the most lit, turned up, packed, cage open division in boxing. And we had 2 hitters in the game, 2 former champions. Devon Alexander, former 2-time champion. And guess what? Andre Berto, a former champion himself. Now, both of these fighters was pretty much well matched in comparison. Okay. The bell started. It was very high energy, very close quarters from the opening bell. They was throwing punches. And when you're that close, toe to toe, you have a southpaw in Alexander and a conventional fighter in Berto. They was throwing hands. They was really landing strikes on one another because they was within distance, no doubt about it. They was actually, testing one another's will. As it pressed on, it came to the 3rd round where Alexander was able to get a knockdown with Berto, who was able to, rise quickly, make the count. And as the fight pressed forward, it was a time where, a jockstrap came down or a guard from Berto, and it was kicked out of the ring. The ref briefly stopped the fight, halt the action, and then resumed it. They picked up where they left off. It was a very well contended striking dynamic between these two. It wasn't too much boxing going on. They was really throwing down in there. I mean, it was strikes. When you say toe the line, fighting in the square, center ring, this what these two, Alexander and Berto, was doing. And they was really letting their hands go. Who was getting the better of who? I had Alexander ahead the first half of the fight. Even up to the 6th round. I kind of had him comfortable. 7th round, I can say the same. He had a cushion knockdown. He was basically pushing his pace and his offense very well, and he wasn't getting hit that much. But somehow, some way in the second half of the fight, Alexander let off the pedal a bit. It's kind of puzzling, but Berto came on very heavy. And you can see Berto sitting down on his punches. I mean, he wasn't trying to throw too many jabs. Everything was to knock Alexander out. He was throwing power punches, hooks to the body, you know, around the guard, through the guard. You know, it wasn't really any type of jab setups or anything. This was just straight power punches Berto was doing when it came to around the ninth, 10th round. These two fought to the final bell, and I would say a very entertaining bout. The only knockdown was Berto in the third, but if you're talking about back and forth action, neither fighter was trying to create space. The space that was going on was, when one another, when Alexander was able to hurt Berto a couple of times and he moved back to the ropes, and Alexander paced himself in the close distance, and to that extent, but most of the fight was close quarters. And fights like this, close quarters, it shows just because you're fighting, chest to chest doesn't mean you have to get hit a lot. And these two wasn't getting hit a lot, even though they was fighting and with present pressure. So when the final bell sounded, decision ended up going to Andre Berto, which I thought for sure that Devon Alexander had did enough to win, adding the knockdown in the third round. You can never know sometime with boxing, but it goes like that. Yeah. It was a disappointment, for many. I thought Alexander won the bout, but Berto was rendered their decision. So there's nothing really I can say about it. I truly don't think these two will be rematching. So what it does is it set Berto up to fight someone else in the welterweight division. Pacquiao. I truly don't see him going in against Terrence Crawford, Errol Spence. And then you have Danny Garcia and Sean Porter fighting for the vacant WBC. And truly, I know Keith Thurman he's not planning on returning to fight someone like Andre Berto, even as a tune-up. Because I truly think Keith Thurman would do well against Berto, seriously. But I know for a fact he's going to come back and take an easy tune-up fight before he really get back in the thick of it with this hot welterweight division where you have fight potentials all around that's very competitive, top tier boxers in that division that's going to make for entertaining next 6 to 8 months. Next, you had Kovalev and Alvarez. Hey, this was for the WBO light heavyweight title, and Alvarez with the upset. Kovalev was doing pretty decent early in the bout. He was landing. Both fighters was pressing the offense the way it should be, And Kovalev wasn't doing bad, but in the 7th round, he was stopped. Alvarez proved that he's the new man on the block. Tough, durable fighter, and I'm curious to see how far he goes. But yeah, he did an excellent job establishing himself, working through, making adjustments in the fight. And he really slowed Kovalev down to the point where he was able to stop him. And it was a grand night for Alvarez. Let me tell you, it was a grand night. He picked up the WBO light heavyweight title, and it was an awesome feeling for him in his camp. It's always like that. You become a world champion and things change overnight. Everything you've been working for finally come to the surface and you're able to enjoy the fruits of your labor. Yeah, that was definitely a nice one. Well, instead of talking about the fight potentials, I have to mention and give a salute to Tevin Farmer, who picked up his IBF world title. Salute to his championship. He did a phenomenal job, performed well, went in there and handled business like he's supposed to. And man, seeing this guy on live, he was elated, man. His family was happy. When you win in the hurt business, everybody smiles. You know what I'm saying? Because they know that the position that you're in is going to bring in more checks. It's going to feed the family. Plus, it's going to set you up for better opportunities with sponsors. You know what I'm saying? Put you in with the bigger fights on the higher tier networks. That's what it's all about. Not everybody's able to experience that, but yes, that's what it's all about. So salute to Tevin Farmer, man. I bet he went home and basically cuddled with that IBF title, and it's a blessing. It's good to see. The other rumor mill that's been in the media is Deontay Wilder possibly fighting Tyson Fury, and both have been bantering in the media saying it's 99% process. We're not sure. A lot of conspiracy theories is going on that Deontay Wilder may be pretentious in this action with Tyson Fury, being that Tyson Fury is in the process of stepping in with Francesco Pianeta, so this is contingent on Fury winning his next bout and then being able to step in with Deontay Wilder. But the conspiracy theory is that they're just doing this to get Joshua to sign the fight with Wilder. And if I have anything to say about it, I truly don't think you're going to run a bluff card on an individual that's not really trying to fight you in the first place. I said this over and over again. I truly think that Anthony Joshua won't truly understand the severity, the magnitude of how he is shredding his legacy until he's close and too deeply immersed and drowning. You know what I'm saying? Right now, he believes that the ink that he's drying on all this paperwork is beneficial to his life. He is the golden child over there. He is the core franchise, the moneymaker that's on Matchroom Promotions. And he's doing anything and everything to appease. But you cannot sit up here and appease everyone without truly understanding when you're too deep. He just signed a 2-fight Wembley deal. Okay. That's going to happen September and April 2019. And then he signed a 3-fight $100 million, which he's not going to get $100 million out of it. I mean, the percentage has to go to that of Hearns also. You know what I'm saying? It has to go. And, I enjoy hearing Joshua fans up here speaking on how much he makes, but they never talk about how much Hearns take. Let me repeat that. They're always talking about how much Joshua makes, but never speak on how much Hearns take. And believe me, he's taking more than a pocket full, their fight fans. So I would just suggest that those fight fans that's Joshua, in the Joshua community, just digress a bit, because you're too far close enough to the point where you believe your hand is in his pocket too, and he's breaking you off a residual every time he gets ready to step into the ring. No, you have nothing to do with it at all. Period. So for Joshua to turn down $50 million and then $30 million for a grand, about $80 million, it's only one reason: that Hearns didn't allow that to happen, due to the fact of him promoting DAZN, the streaming service. If Joshua would have made that much money, no telling what network it would have been on, especially if he's to fight in the States. Hearn probably gave him the spiel that, don't worry about turning down that $50 million. You're going to make millions with me. Sure enough, you are going to make millions, but it's going to be extensively less than what you would have made if you would have took that $50 million. And then that was just upfront money. Went and fought Deontay Wilder. Then made another 20 to 25 million that night. Then in the rematch, you're coming out happy with another 30 million. But it never even matured to the point of you just stepping up and saying, yes, I want to do this. And that's all I'm going to say about it. I'm done talking about this right now. I really hope Deontay Wilder and Tyson Fury make this fight happen. I truly do. I want it to happen. I just want to see a heavyweight contenders match, championship, with two competitors, top tier, and that will be the lineal champion Tyson Fury, who is coming back from a long hiatus. But guess what? No one has defeated Tyson Fury, and the belts that Joshua have is that of Tyson Fury. And the WBC heavyweight champion Deontay Wilder, he's been calling out and been on the phone trying to make this happen. And we all know the debacle that played out in the media. There's no need to retread all the way on what transpired. But we know when it comes down to accountability, Deontay Wilder has made the initiative. He's been proactive. It has been Joshua who has been in retreat. So that's just a little bit information for the fight fans out there. Thank you all for tuning in. This is World Combat Sports. Be sure to follow me on all social media outlets. And I do have another request. Hey, tell a friend, a family member, join the group, like the page, and also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. Smash the bell icon on the YouTube channel and subscribe. I will try to keep this up on a weekly basis, but be sure to tune in and turn up.